There's one. Good one too. God, he was shallow. I mean, he was shallow. When you got super shallow water like this and cover, it's hard to beat a hollow-bodied frog. You know, I love throwing on this really crystal clear water, and it just, you can see it's kind of a shallow, marshy background. There's a lot of these little overhanging bushes and things like that, and I can skip this frog into those little holes and things. There's just nothing else out here for him. So, and there's literally 6 inches of water up there, but it's the closest thing with a little shade on it this morning. They're up there, and that frog is one of the few baits that you can throw, because anything else is going to be on the bottom right away. You know, heat of the summer, they like overhead cover and they like shade. These northern lakes like this, you know, they'll have a lot of these real shallow banks, and you can see it's a swamp that's right, leads up to it. It's got a few little streams and things in it, and it's got these little, like, almost like blueberry bushes that kind of grow right up to it. A lot of times they're undercut. There'll be some little mats blown in there. There's a few little shallow pads and things like that. It's just a perfect spot for the resident shallow fish to get. So it looks awesome right up here in front of me. Golly. Let me put the talons down. That one scared me right there. And you know, one thing, if you know much about me and my style, I love to fish fast. I love to cover water. And one of the hardest things when you're throwing a frog is to be patient. There's no wind. You know, the conditions are real calm. I'm not seeing a lot of bait fish moving or anything. I know they're gonna be, if they're there, they're gonna be right up tight to this edge. So I wanna work it up there, pitch it up there in the grass, pop it out a couple of times, and then just let it soak, just let it sit. I mean, this thing has so much action when it's sitting still with those legs just sitting there. It's hard for me to do, but you gotta be patient. You know, when I came into this little pocket and saw these flat pads, you know, it's not just that solid edge where I can just be real slow. So I like to move that frog a little faster and see if I can't get a fish to move on it. You know, if you can see one to hump on it or wake on it, you can always just stop the frog, slow it down. These fish want it real slow. So, you know, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make that cast out there like that, get it in those pads, and I'll move it pretty quick. And then if it gets to an open hole like that, you stop it, just pop it a couple times, let it walk back and forth, let it sit. When you get back into these pads again, you know, I'll just skitter it right along them pretty quick, and just try to see if you can see one moving towards it. If you got a huge expansive area, it just allows you to cover a lot more water. Here's another one. Got it. Oh, that was awesome. I mean, and he has got it all the way down. That's how you want to see him eat your frog right there. That's what you want right there. I mean, so it's real quiet, and you know, I was moving it over these pads here. Gosh, he got it. And I seen him move, and all you want to do then is just slow it down and just stop it and just barely wiggle it. When I was at the ramp this morning, there was just little frogs all over the place right on the bank. So I'm like, we might have to look for that shallow bite, and it's paying off. He moved on it. It's so still. A big part of frog fishing is without a doubt your presentation. You know, being able to make a really good cast. You know, here on these pads and stuff, it's not as critical, but when you're trying to throw it underneath these, you know, shallow docks or underneath these bushes, having a setup that you can skip that frog, and it's real natural for it to come skipping in there. So that is something that is really special. You know, when I'm throwing a frog, having a rod that you can skip it with is critical. So This is a Lew's KVD, it's a GC5. It's a 7'2" medium heavy, and it's designed for skipping. It's got a little shorter handle, so it's nice to get in and around your body. The rod itself has a real fast tip, just for a little bit, and it's got a lot of backbone here. So having that fast tip helps you to walk that frog, to work that frog real well, but then you got a lot of power down here in the rod. I've got 50-pound braid on here, and I've got a Lew's skipping reel. It's got a braking system that's designed for skipping. It only holds, 40 to 50 yards of line, but I can still throw it a long ways, but you just can't really backlash this reel. It's got an 8:3-to-1 gear ratio because so often you just want to burn it in to make another cast. So having a high-speed reel is really, really critical. Having a setup like this, having the reel and the right rod, it's everything for this technique, and it's a difference maker in how many fish you're going to catch. Got it. Right out in the open on the point. Now that one, the conditions have changed a little bit. I mean, the wind just started picking up, and I came to this, bulrush point right here. So I picked up the pad perch and just threw it out in the open. This is, what I love to throw. If you got open water, this pad perch is just super lively, and it's a real natural bluegill finish, and that's exactly what they're feeding on. So he come up there and got it right where that wind was pushing into the tip of those bulrushes. This pad perch, around these open areas, you're just walking the dog with it. It's very similar to a stick bait. It's real lively. I can fish it a little bit faster, and you're imitating a wounded bluegill with it. And these, these bass and around these, with this wind pushing in like this, they should come out to the edges of this a little more. I'm still going to throw back in some of these more open holes and stuff, but it's where these fish should set up with this wind picking up like this. Most instances, I want my frog to be livelier. I want it to walk more. So I want to make those tails shorter. The shorter the tails, the less drag, the less of a parachute effect it has, and the more that frog wants to walk back and forth. On this pad perch, I usually take most all the center and just break them off out of there and just leave, 3 or 4 on each side of it, and then at that point I can actually trim them even a little shorter if I want. But that has a lot less drag now, and it really enhances the walking action of that pad perch. It's still got a good visual sight appeal, but it just really livens up the action of the frog. I mean, it just goes crazy walking now, and it really makes a big difference, I think, in that action. Now on the sexy frog, one of the things that I definitely do, I want to trim those legs to enhance that side-to-side action. So I'm going to trim about one about halfway down. I want to make the other one about a 1/4 inch longer. So if I've got one that's longer than the other, it's always, this side's going to drag more, and it's always going to want to lean. It actually throws it out of balance and helps your side-to-side walking action. There's a big one. Golly, he got it right on the edge. It's so shallow that I can't even hardly get there. I can't even hardly run the boat, the trolling motor. But yet these fish, I mean, for them, it doesn't got to be very deep, and they can get right up there and get right in it. So. But with this wind, I think it's just put them out here to the edge where they're ambushing bluegill and perch and things. But he thought he was getting one, but the pad perch bit him back. It's not as easy to fish, blowing down through here with the wind, but with those talons on the back, it just is a game changer. I can just drift with the wind, put the talons down, pick a little area apart, go a little bit further again, so you're not having to churn up the bottom with that trolling motor. So if you can use the wind to your advantage, it really makes a big difference. There, we got him. Gosh, he just sucked it down, just right at the edge of the pads right there. That's what they'll do so many times, is just follow it out like that, And he finally got it. I missed 3 or 4 in a row right there, but now this wind's picking up. They're pushing up underneath these edges right here. There's some cheese there, and that's what you really want to look for is these subtle differences. You know, just like some of the best flippers that I know for fishing mats and things like that, frogging is all about that too. It's about visually going down and looking, and you really want to slow down and work that frog real slow. I mean, that one came right there on the edge and ate the frog. All these fish are super shallow, but the ones that, you know, the areas that have just a little bit of depth close to them, or, you know, a little better grass edge, or just, you know, a little bit of space underneath those pads for those fish to get, that's where they're, you know, that's where they're at. I mean, I'm just fishing everything, but as I go through and see that those areas that have a little deeper water, or they've got a good, clean, hard outside edge, golly. He was in them scattered pads right there. Most of them have been right out front, but that one was, he was right in the stuff right there. It's another good fish. Gosh. I mean, he was just kind of in those open holes right there, and those scattered pads, and the wind's blowing in here, and they're definitely moving, you know, back from that thicker stuff out to this outside edge. So he just exploded on it. You know, it's crazy how we started out the day. These fish were real timid. I'd have to let the frog soak, just barely move it and just let it set for him to explode on it. I was working that along, just skittering it across the top, and he just blew up on it. So it's just getting a lot, you know, they're just getting more active. When you've got super shallow water like this and cover, it's hard to beat a hollow-bodied frog. It is one of the funnest ways you can fish, and it's super effective.